guys, this is Jock from Kelpi. Today we're going to be assembling and installing one of our new systems for the R9. So I'm going to take you through the process of installing it and also getting all of these various fasteners on these fairings off to get this bike stripped down and ready to put a new system on it. Process so far is we're going to remove the fairings first, we're going to loosen off the radiator, and then that'll give us access to the exhaust system. We're going to grab out of the long bolt out of your main fairing. Now a lot of these are going to be using a size 4 Allen key. So you want to start with that as well as your short fairing screws. There's 2 of those, here and here. And then you've got 3 bolts. I've already loosened them off here. There we are. Just want to do that carefully. As you can see, they're up, so you really are just trying to push it down to unclick it. We've got 3 push pins. This one here, which requires a Phillips head to loosen off and remove. And then we've got one up here, just on the inside. Again, just pop the head, size 4 tool, pop the head, and then you can remove it. Another one just here. Push piece comes out there, so it will look like that. You're just going and pulling that out. There's a radiator overflow line just here. You should just be able to pull the overflow out of that, and you can just squeeze it back in once you're done. Alright, so we're going to get started on removing the exhaust system, but just before we do that, we want to give ourselves as much access as possible whilst not having to remove anything that we don't really need to remove. So we're going to try and start by, basically there's a bolt in here, and this is a Allen key now. It used to be a 10mm head, and we're just going to nip that off. We're just going to remove the front-facing piece of that, which previously was a guide and now is an actual bolt. So we're just going to get our size 5 Allen key in on one side, a 10 on the other. We can crack that. Sweet. I'm going to keep these aside and together. Before we can get that piece out, we're just going to need to remove this sleeve. Wedging something in there can be a good way to kind of break it out of that rubber seal. Once you've got that off, the bracket should be able to come out. With that radiator lower support bracket removed, we can start undoing our header flange nuts with a size 12 and our O2 sensor with a 17mm spanner. You'll have quite a few zip ties like this. These are removable zip ties. Remove them by pulling on the inner tab like that, and they will come out. Make sure you keep these, and we're just trying to get a little bit of extra play because we are going to have to turn this a few times. Unless you feel like disconnecting this, up to you. For all of the XSRs and the MT09s, there's been more than enough cable length that you're able to clear the threads without causing any damage. That's not put any major tension on those wires. Quite impressed with this R9. The radiator clearance on the header ports means it looks like it's a straight shot. Just going to get in. If you bought yourself an R9, that's a benefit, because the MT09 and the XSR900 radiators are a little bit lower, and as a result, you have to basically remove the top mounting point so that you have more flexibility and can move it further away. So now that we've got the header flange nuts off, we're able to go over to here. This is the lower support bolt. It's actually a bolt-on the R9. There's a couple of bolts for it here if you want to remove it completely. We're just going to remove that one, and then we're going to go around to the other side and remove that. Now, please be aware, once you remove both of these bolts, the thing can drop out from under you. So make sure your O2 sensor is already disconnected before you get to this stage. You don't want to be putting unnecessary tension there. So I've got all of my headers flange nuts off. The flange plates I've slid off the ports. And this means that this thing is ready to drop out as soon as this thing falls. So I'll be putting a little bit of tension on it to hold the weight while I remove this bolt. And then it'll just come straight out like that. $7.285, so 7.3 kilos there. All right, so with the new system, you'll have a set of headers. You'll have a fastener set, spring puller tool, things like that. That will be your merge collector. Your link. And your muffler. And you'll also have a standard baffle as well. So that's the system in total. Fastener sets, these are your headers, these are your header flange plates, slip joint header flanges. This is your link pipe, that's your merge collector and catalyst, and that's your muffler. So we're going to start the install by basically assembling our headers onto our merge collector and cat section. It's a really easy way to sort of figure this. I don't even use my numbers anymore, but obviously put the numbers to the numbers. The easiest way to do this is just face the catalyst away from you. Chuck in your center header. That's the shortest one. Single bend, really easy, really simple. Then you just look at it and put it either left or right. Pretty simple. There we go. Now I'm going to cut these. Bring those off. So from there, we're going to seat the headers into the exhaust ports. So I like to get them to the point that they're all sitting like so. Technically wanting 40 mils of distance between them. So that gives you a rough guide that you can just then hold in place and bring up into place. A few turns till I can tell that the actual header is into the exhaust port, and then I'm going to move on to the other ones. So getting it up into the port, sliding the flange plate onto the studs, and I am stoked to say that we're getting into this. I've got pretty large hands and I'm able to get my whole hand in there, which is basically only achievable by the fact that they've brought that radiator forward and given a decent amount of space there to work with. So we're not going to get this tight just yet. We're just going to get them all on and seated. Now if I didn't have the space here with the radiator giving me a little bit of clearance, you could always use a tool, put your flange nut on the top and get it up and in. Yeah, absolutely loving this R9 in terms of every single flange nut can be fitted with a straight extension bar. Like I can get up exactly just enough space to be able to get all of these on, and that's just not something I can say about a CP3 for a long time. So again, we're not torquing these up. Sweet. Okay, from here we're going to just put our springs on from the header to the merge collector. Great. So we've got that, and it still has a little bit of flexibility because obviously we've designed these on slip joint flange plates and we haven't torqued it up to spec. So it's not all in a fixed position. This is where we want it. Now the beautiful thing about this link pipe, and that's your secondary O2 sensor for Euro 5 Plus, so just bung it off if you've only got one O2 sensor. By bunging it off, I mean use the supplied 18mm 02 sensor bung and just screw that in if you don't need that for your particular model. There's about half in Australia at the moment that are dual 02 sensor or single 02 sensor. It's basically, you've just got to look at your bike to know what works for you, but we've designed it in a way that works for everyone. The important part to note on the way that I've designed this link pipe is it's on a slip join with spring mounts, and you're able to adjust how much tucked in or sitting outwards it is because of that. So you can have it really closely tucked in up here, or you can bring it a little bit further down just off of that. And by having it on these slip joins, we're also able to bring it inwards and outwards to really set the perfect position that we want when we go to do that. Great. Okay, now that we've got our headers, merge collector and link pipe on, it's time to put the muffler on and the muffler rear hanger bracket. Muffler's an easy slide on, and obviously with your position you do have a little bit of flexibility inwards and outwards, upwards and down, but you're wanting to get your position right into the point that it's basically sitting quite parallel with the swing arm on that exit. So about there, we're going to get a size 14mm breaker bar. Okay, so we're just removing that nut, and then the larger hole on your hanger bracket is going to come in on the back side of that shaft, so we're not needing to jack the bike up or anything like that. We're just removing that nut and putting that nut back on. Now that's going to have to go back up to a fairly large torque setting, but I'm just going to get that in place before I chuck my bolt straight in. So again, you want to get your position right. I like to keep about a finger's distance from that swing arm, bearing in mind that that distance and gap will increase as soon as you sit on the bike. Liking my gap, so I'm going to tighten that one up. Obviously we've still got to tighten up our linkage bolt. See that? That's about the gap you're wanting to have just there. From here we need to tighten that back up, going up to 45 Newton meters. Yep.
Put them on here, take the washer, and then we take the nylock nut like this, nylock 17mm, a couple of reverse twisties, and a full twisty. Demonstrating here.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to push this piece up into where it needs to go and then slide in that rubber into the lower support. Then I'm going to grab the screw, just put it through the bracket and onto the thread. Just get a couple of turns if you can with your hands, just like that. Once you've got your screw in a couple of turns, you're going to grab this piece. It slides in from the left side through here. Just wiggle that onto the rubber piece, and then you're replacing that bolt back into it and replacing the nut. Size 5mm Allen key on the bolt, size 10mm on the nut. Now that you've done that, we can tighten up our top bolt hanger. It's really easy to get most of the turns done with just one of these long end ball ends of a 5mm Allen key. Next step is to get our flanges springed up to our headers. So we've put about 4 holes per flange plate for you to choose basically the easiest spot. I find the lower on cylinder 3 outside is the easiest one to get up onto there. You do not need 2 per spring, you only need, realistically, the outside 2 to be in place, although you can do one on the inside if you would like. It's not required. So from this point, we're basically just putting everything back together. But before we do that, we want to check that we've actually done the fitment correctly. It's really important that you do turn the bike over, listen out for any leaks or anything you might need to change. So this is where we'll turn the bike on and just hear that we've got everything fitted correctly. So absolutely no leaks there. You would hear a bit of a slapping noise if you did have a leak on one of your header flange plates. Generally, if you've already torqued those up, you're not going to have a problem. But if you have clapped out exhaust gaskets, then you can get a leak and you may need to increase the torque setting or replace those exhaust gaskets. You've got a full fairing bike and you're going to have to put all of the fairings back off if you've done something incorrectly. Super important to do that check before you start putting all of your gear back on. Awesome. So from here, we might just do a quick little time lapse to put everything back together. I don't need to teach you how to do it again. And we'll get to a stage where we've got a bike ready to ride again. Let's do it.